Welcome inside the Fox 19 Now studios. We're on the big set because this is a big deal. Joe Danneman and Charlie Goldsmith, who is officially now a member of the Fox 19 Now sports family as a contributor. You'll see Charlie's work all over our website on the Bengals and Reds. Charlie's chalkboard will be a tab right there on our sports page. You can check out all of his work. Listen, I've told Charlie this many times. I'll tell him again here on this segment. He is a rising star, not only in Cincinnati, but nationally in this business. I love everything about the way he goes about his job, and we're going to highlight that here on this show. Charlie, welcome aboard.
Oh, you just won a big award yourself. I feel like we're burying the lead here. I'm not the host, though, so I don't get to start, but congratulations to you.
Thank you. What's cool about that award was I had no idea it was coming, and I was nominated by coworkers. You talk about feeling good about yourself. It's not the award. It's the fact that coworkers at least like you enough that they go out of their way to nominate you for something cool like that. So thank you to my coworkers. We're going to do this every week. Charlie and I, sometimes it might be Jeremy, it might be Gabby, it might be Reagan, depending on schedules, who's traveling for what. We travel all throughout the football season. But for now, it's going to be Charlie and I. We're going to dive into the Bengals and Reds each week. I have some segments planned here that we're going to get into as we continue to do this show. But let's just start with the Bengals to get this going. Before we do that, I almost forgot. We need a name for this. I've workshopped a few ideas.
Okay.
I want to put it out there for everybody else. And let me know what you think. And I'm playing off your last name. The Gold Standard.
Sure.
You like the Gold Standard?
Sure.
I thought about Gold Bars. If you're a rap fan,
that works, yeah.
Charlie's dropping some bars. And then I have some segment ideas. Might be Gold Nuggets.
Sure.
Which you always have plenty of. And the Gold Rush. Where I think I might challenge you. I think I challenged you recently to name every player in the Bengals roster.
One of my favorite moments with you guys at Fox.
So we might do stuff like that as we continue this CTV podcast streaming show here on Fox 19 Now. Let's start Bengals. So Joe Burrow had the big press conference this week. I have a takeaway from it, but I'll let you go first. What was your big takeaway from Joe in his press conference?
I think you're seeing Joe Burrow finally getting to relax, put last season behind him, and start to have fun again. Last season really tested Joe because it felt like all other 52 players in the organization were either getting benched or in flux or wanted a new contract or didn't know if they'd have a job this coming season. And Burrow kind of had to politic his way through all of that. Finally, the team feels settled again. Yes, there's the Hendrickson thing. We'll put it on the side. But everything else is in a more comfortable, more manageable spot.
I thought the same thing from Joe. And you know how frustrated it must be to be so good at your job, have the kind of year he did last year, and you can't celebrate it. You can't have fun with it because of what's going on around you and what was happening with the Bengals. We know they made the run at the end of the year, but certainly what Joe did last year, I don't think he had a chance to actually enjoy it as much as he wanted to. He was awarded Comeback Player of the Year, but I'll take you inside the Bengals press conference. Here's what happened when Joe did his press conference. So he was supposed to go at 12:15. So we were all set up, all the TV folks, all the newspaper guys, all the website people. And they came in and told us that Joe was still on the practice field. He's going to be a while, so if you want to go inside the locker room, go ahead. I said, well, I'm going to stay here because we're going to take this live on TV. And then Joe walked in. It was just myself, and it was one of the Bengals video staffers. And we're like, what's up, Joe? He's like, hey, how's it going? And then he went behind the podium and just went into like a catcher's crouch and just stayed there for like 2 minutes. And meanwhile, all the other media started filing in to get set up and get ready to go. But I looked at a guy. Have you seen Star Wars?
Yes.
Have you seen The Matrix?
Yeah.
So it's almost like Luke Skywalker and Neo when they get to
That's
the
a powerful
point.
person.
Right. When they get to the point where at the height of their powers, they know they're in control, and there's this calmness to them in every situation. You think about Luke Skywalker at Jabba's palace. When he walks in there, he has all that confidence. That's what it felt like to me watching Joe just do that, observe him do that, just sitting back there calmly as himself, and it felt like he was back again, like you said. His mood had changed from what he was last year.
There's no problem he has to deal with right now. Like, again, he's not making Trey Hendrickson's contract status his issue like he did with T. Higgins, for example, or the Jamar Chase negotiations. There's not a new offensive coordinator this year like there was last year. At this point last year, there were new starters at running back, tight end. Yoshivas was trying to become wide receiver 3. Are they trying to put Burton in an immediate starting role? They had a new right tackle as well. This year, you've got a new line coach. He's taking care of the guards. Aside from that, Burrow just kind of gets to play football. The continuity has been a major theme that players have stressed with me. And there's a lot of focus in, all right, we know what this is. Let's see how this really looks with a chance to gel for the first time.
The other thing I found interesting too, and my other big takeaway, was what he said in his first statement, that he doesn't want to have the kind of influence going forward with what he had with Jamar and T. And maybe that's specific to Trey, or maybe that's he wants the front office to be able to recognize when you have guys like Jamar and T and they perform like they do, it shouldn't be on me to be the guy that has to go to the Super Bowl and go in front of every microphone and every camera and stump for these guys. Did you find interesting what he said, that he doesn't want that kind of influence inside the organization?
Yes, and at least publicly. But my stance on the Jamar and T politicking, here's what I've always said. Do you really think that was the first time that Joe Burrow ever did? Did he just wake up last December and said, you know what I'm going to start doing? This has been going. I know examples of this in 2022. Maybe 2021. I'm definitely not ruling it out. Burrow's been doing this for a while. It's just the T and Jamar conversations with extensions were so important and so pivotal and so public. Like, we weren't having this conversation about, I don't know, what are they going to do at right guard. Joe wasn't in a spot where he was publicly having to make his stance there, and we weren't waiting for his answer on that. But they asked Joe what they wanted at different spots, or of course they like to know what he's thinking heading into the draft about philosophically the way the roster could come together. This has been going on for a while, and it'll never be as public as it was again with Jamar and T. But just know that's going on.
So he mentioned Trey. He talked about Trey briefly and said he hopes Trey gets everything he deserves to be paid, but it was a very quick statement and then he moved on. I think that's a good pivot point here to talk about the defense. So I was inside the bubble earlier that day, and the Bengals had their starting defensive line lined up. And understand Shamar Stewart isn't practicing, B.J. Hill isn't practicing in a boot, and Trey Hendrickson is not here. But they had lined up across the defensive line Joseph Osai, Chris Jenkins, TJ Slayton, and Miles Murphy. And it's at that moment when you think to yourself, boy, this team really does need Trey Hendrickson desperately. What's your take on what's going on with Trey? Trey
Hendrickson was someone the Bengals should have made a decision on in March. My stance in March, I think I said this, on a segment I did with you, was that the Bengals should have traded Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals should have opened up $16 million in cap space. They should have signed a pass rushing defensive tackle and another Joseph Osai type who could play 40% of the snaps and kind of platoon your starting defensive line together, and also have a pick to go out and dress a position like safety, which the Bengals safety just took a pay cut. Free safety, that's where they're at safety. The Bengals are always very not deliberate enough. They're always very patient, very conservative with how they approach these types of conversations. So they've gotten stuck a few times, and right now they're certainly stuck. Trey's extremely frustrated. Trey went too far by showing up to talk to us, which was appreciated, but you guys know where I'm going with that. But neither side is going to be happy regardless of what the outcome is this season.
Okay, so predict for me here. What do you think happens with Trey? I've maintained all along I believe he's a Bengal this coming year. I think he plays out the final year of his contract and then the two sides part, but that's just my guess at this situation. What's your guess on what happens with Trey Hendrickson this coming season?
It's too late to trade him now because you open up $16 million to do what? So you need Trey in 2025. Hendrickson clearly hasn't been in their plans for the back end of this decade. Hendrickson said they haven't even expressed to him the willingness to go into those years, and understandably so. I actually was more underwhelmed with Trey Hendrickson's season when you look at the totality of when he was making his impact and who it was against, and when he was actually negatively impacting the team in some of the biggest moments of the season. So that would make me reluctant to get a long-term deal done there. So let's hope he plays, kind of probably is the Bengals' stance. Let's do the best he can in 2025 to make do with a situation that no one's going to be happy with. I think Trey plays, and the Bengals want him to play for the Bengals.
Well, now I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this are curious as well. What is that you talk about with Trey, that he was good against some teams in certain moments and not as great in other big moments? Do you have specific examples?
Yep. I do have a spreadsheet that I don't have in front of me. And so these numbers will be rough, but when you look at when he got his sacks, they were always against bad quarterbacks and bad offensive tackles. He accumulated so many of his sacks late in games. The Bengals were up 2 scores. Like, he took over on the road against Dorian Thompson-Robinson of the Browns, or against, we like Desmond Ridder, but Desmond Ridder did not look like, he had just gotten to Vegas. How was he supposed to know their offense?
Right.
And Hendrickson took over that. All right, maybe week 18 against the Steelers, but I don't think the Steelers were trying in week 18. And then you look at when he was negatively impacting plays, negative impact on 4th and 16 against the Chiefs, the Dejon Anthony play, when you look at his rush lane there.
Yeah.
Negative impact on the road in Baltimore when they needed something. Hendrickson was over-aggressive and not getting to the quarterback, negatively impacting a lot of plays where they needed it.
Okay, 2 more thoughts here before we go on to the Reds. We're going to pop up some video of the Bengals defense here, and I'm sure whenever we pop it up, you're going to see guys, Logan Wilson, but you're going to see a lot of guys who are either new guys in new places or young guys the Bengals need to take a step forward this coming year. I think Duke Tobin famously said he didn't want to pay more for the same roster as he had last year. Is this defense different enough this year, do you think, for the Bengals to take the kind of jump they need the defense to take for them to not only get to the playoffs, everybody expects that, but to win playoff games and compete for something bigger? The
defense basically needs like a 10-leg parlay to all hit. And that is what happened in 2021. Like in 2021, it was, do the Bengals even have a starting linebacker? Because we haven't seen Logan Wilson in that role yet. It was Von Bell actually had a bad 2020. Jesse Bates had to improve as a tackler. It was 3 new starting cornerbacks. All these things ended up happening. Now, these are probably even more questions, bigger questions than they were in 2021. Can it happen? They don't know. I don't know. What you want to see is, can this be a defense that can create 3 or 4 splash plays against the best quarterbacks?
Yeah.
So that's, what can Myles Murphy do to improve his speed, for example? That's Demetrius Knight. Is he able to kind of manufacture the tackle for loss backfield production that Jermaine Pratt did at his best? Can any of these corners or safeties blitz? Are any of them specifically going to be ball hawks in zone coverage? That's the easiest route to this being a defense that's enough to maybe force a few mistakes to give this offense a chance to win.
In the hypothetical 10-leg parlay, what's the first leg, the most important leg for this Bengals defense to be better and take a jump this year?
Everyone I've asked in the organization. First thing they bring up is Myles Murphy.
Yeah.
That's where this starts. When you factor in the Hendrickson discussion of it, when you factor in Hendrickson's struggles against the run, then the Bengals' struggles against the run last year, they need an all-around defensive end. It's a premium position for a reason, and Murphy's also supposed to be their future, and now they have Shamar Stewart as well, but the idea is he's 2 years behind Myles Murphy. So that's where this defense starts, especially because if he's great, if he just has a 10-sack season, I think this is probably pretty close to a good defense. That is such a cheat code to having a pretty good defense.
Is there a 10-sack season inside Myles Murphy?
They don't know, and they specifically don't. What they want to see, this is a football term, can he pin his ears back? Can he just go? Because they talk a lot about the pass rush plan and the moves and the tendencies, but it's, can Myles Murphy just be you? Just go out and get you. And that's what they haven't seen from him over the course of his career. He's done things technically fine, but it's that little extra bit that, for example, Sam Hubbard was unbelievable at over the course of his career. That's what they need to see out of Myles Murphy.
Is this his last shot?
No, because you know what they're going to be doing next year? They're going to be signing $10 million worth of players to improve the defense, drafting 1 or 2 guys at a premium position, and probably having Murphy and Stewart as their starting defensive ends. But is this every year, does a Super Bowl get more likely or less likely? Each shot has its own piece of urgency, and what Murphy can do this year is massive regardless.
I think it's important to understand, too, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I've been saying all along that, look, this defensive reworking, retooling, restocking of talent, it wasn't going to be fixed in one offseason. And maybe the Bengals didn't do enough this offseason to totally fix it, but we won't know until we see these draft picks. And they threw a lot of draft capital at this defense, but I didn't think they made a big enough splash in free agency on defense for me to feel completely comfortable that they're going to be better this year. I think they have a chance to be. Certainly they're banking and betting on themselves to develop these guys. They're banking and betting on Al Golden to be different and better for this team going forward. But I still think it's going to take another offseason for them to get this thing to the point where they feel really comfortable with their defense.
I mean, you talk about what they did and didn't do in the offseason, and then we continue that conversation talking about playmaking. Well, the guys they brought in were T.J. Slayton and Oren Burks.
Yeah.
T.J. Slayton is a run-stop.
Yeah.
TJ Slayton will make 0 headlines this season, even if he's doing his job, but we just don't talk about nose tackles because outside of DJ Reader, who is generational, they're not playmakers. Oren Burks will be the 4th linebacker on this team. This will probably be the last Oren Burks mention we have. Like, that's what they added. So the playmakers still are the same group that they had. They just have to develop.
Okay, last thing on the Bengals here. Let's pop up the graphic of the schedule. And we're going to see 2 graphics that divide the schedule up into 2. Is there anything that jumps out to you about the Bengals' upcoming schedule in 2025?
I've got a controversial opinion.
Yeah, let's go.
Thanksgiving night at Baltimore is good.
Oh, I agree.
So let me tell you a story from what the 2024 season should have been. The 2024 season for the Bengals should have been starting with that Raiders game, which it was a blowout, but it was kind of a weird, fluky game. They didn't play that well. Burrow addresses the team after the game in the locker room. That should have been Burrow's, like, Tim Tebow Heisman speech. That was the moment that would have let off the documentary about the season, that sparked a run, that would have been Burrow, leader, vocal. It would have been one of his crowning achievements, the run the speech that inspired the run, which led into them in Baltimore playing terrific. You know, they were stomping the Ravens for 3 quarters, and then they blew it. What someone told me late last season was what a player told me. What they needed was an everyone gets a game ball game, which you know the games I'm talking about. Examples in the past were at San Francisco in 23, home versus the Chiefs in 2022, at the Ravens in 21. Games that give you momentum that can truly carry you through the playoffs because they show you can beat anybody. And the Bengals haven't done that since the 49ers game in 23. They need to do it again. It's a weaker schedule. You know, not a lot of superpowers on that team, on that schedule. So one chance to do so really is at Baltimore.
Speaking of documentaries and Joe Burrow, I got an email from the folks with NFL Films this week asking if a couple of our segments, just really quick ones, could be used in the quarterback show. It's going to be on Netflix. So I don't know who it's going to be from here in the Fox 19 sports department, but somebody, maybe multiple people, will get some quick moments talking about Joe Burrow on that series. Okay, let's move forward now to the Cincinnati Reds. You were in Pittsburgh. The question I have about the Reds is, how do you lose a series to the White Sox? How do you sweep the Guardians and then turn around and lose another series to a last-place team in the Pittsburgh Pirates? How does that happen with this ball club this season, that they can go from the ultimate low to the ultimate high to the ultimate low all in 7 days?
I have a different answer than I think the Reds do. When I ask people, they have an answer that is valid, that I'll share, that I disagree with and I have a different take on. What the Reds will tell you is it's a lot about situational hitting. It's about playing the game in a way that complements each other. It's about the little details of execution and approach and the team establishing its identity, gelling with the vision of the new coaching staff, and really getting its feet under it from that perspective. How I look at it, though, is Matt McClain's just underperformed. Ellie De La Cruz has underperformed. Spencer Steer, Tyler Stevenson, every young guy on this team, I guess outside of a week of Will Benson, but it's too early for that, has underperformed.
And that's what they're built on, right? Is that these young players are supposed to carry this team.
And so why do they score 24 runs one day and then 1 run the next? Well, because guys who are hitting 200 will not keep scoring 24 runs a game. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. They will fall back to earth more drastically because they've been performing at that level. And so when these guys are the styles of hitters they've been, they all need to significantly find stuff that just makes them better than they've been. And there's a lot of work that has to happen.
So if you were to describe the Reds season through, 51 games? So 50 games plus, what's the one word you would use for this team? Just
like stuck. Like they're stuck at this point. There have been so many moments where you thought, all right, they're turning the corner. They're hitting on the gas. They're accelerating. Like you get all these metaphors that I'm using. And then the wheel just gets stuck in the mud or whatever happens. You know, that's the thing that happens on dirt roads, right? Just when they really start pressing on the gas, it's a flat tire that sets them, and they're just stuck at this point. Now, there's all the time in the world for Ellie to click, for McClain to click. I still feel solid about Steer and Stevenson and this young core as a whole offensively, but they've all got to find stuff because they've gotten into a familiar pattern through 50 games.
Okay, Gold Rush. So the Gold Rush is going to be me asking him rapid fire questions. I didn't really prepare for it because I didn't know I was going to go for it on the first week, but we're going to go for it right now. We're going to do the Gold Rush with Charlie on the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions I want you to answer, and you can expound on it. It might give me more time to think of another topic to ask. Here we go. Gold Rush question number 1. Team MVP through 51 games is who?
Hunter Green.
It's that easy.
Even though he's been hurt, he's been that good.
Can he still win an MVP, or excuse me, win a Cy Young despite missing a little bit of time?
Yes, because in this era, pretty much every pitcher is going to miss 2 weeks or so over the course of a season.
The Reds All-Stars, if I said multiple, who would they be?
Right now, I'm still just going to stick with one, Hunter Green. I think Ellie has too much room to climb. He can get hot, but he'll have to get really hot, I think, with how much competition there is in the infield in the National League.
Andrew Abbott.
Andrew Abbott's just always, there's a long track record of guys who just aren't flashy but perform really well, just not getting that. He deserves it. Here's a story.
Okay.
I was told last year on July whatever that the Reds were getting, I believe it was another All-Star, because yes, Green was the injury replacement. And I remember I had like 15 minutes and I looked at Hunter's season, I looked at Abbott's season. I kind of thought it might have been Abbott, but then it was Hunter. And Abbott actually also thought it was going to be Hunter. So that business side of it makes me think that Abbott has a steeper climb. Great job, though, this year by Andrew Abbott.
The funny thing about the All-Star game is you only have to be good for half a season.
Yeah.
And then you're honored with something that's going to be on your resume the rest of your life. Andrew Abbott has a 1.8 ERA.
Yep.
I could look it up right now. I'm guessing that's top 10, top 7 in the National League for guys who qualify, maybe even higher. And we're more than halfway to the All-Star game. The voting starts in, what, a month? I got to think Andrew Abbott has a shot with that ERA. Okay, next question in the Gold Rush is Terry Francona's mood is what?
He hates losing. I mean, he's in this because there's the Terry Francona when they win, and there's the Terry Francona who he has a million stories of staying up at night, once ordering $40 worth of ice cream and room service when they lose. I think there's something to the team identity and the visions for players and how that works with adjustments still meshing. I don't think he's lost any confidence in the team, certainly. I think he still has very high expectations for the season, but the team's kind of stuck, and he's like, all right, he kind of did turn the page with the message last week, like, we've got to back this up. You're starting to see him press more buttons as well.
This team's ceiling is what?
88 games, and I think the Cubs are probably going to outperform.
88 wins.
Yeah, 88 wins. I think they can, with the 2023 Reds, we're still like 5 games under 500 at this point in that season. And then Ellie, McClain, Benson, Fraley, and that time Votto all got hot. And sub in Steer for Votto. I think this team has a run that it's capable of, plus a pitching staff that's 10 times better, a pitching staff that has kept them in all but, I believe, 3 games this season, and those 3 games were started by Carson Spires and Chase Petty. So when this team, because of how they pitch, they always have a chance. Now, I am predicting this team right now to still be at 500, but it is possible.
And Charlie's go-to guy for an interview when the Reds are scuffling is?
It depends on what they're scuffling about. I'll give you a top 3. Friedel, a former Media Good Guy Award winner, has always been great. Steer, a guy I've actually voted for in the past. I don't think he's won it, but for the Media Good Guy Award, he's always been great. And then I'll throw in Emilio Pagan, just one of the true professionals in all of professional sports.
He's outstanding.
Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
He's outstanding.
Really fun to talk to. Okay, we'll finish the show with what I'm going to call the Gold Nuggets. And this can go anywhere, any week, but I do think we can start with this because you and I have had the good fortune to go to a lot of places covering sporting events. You were just in Pittsburgh at PNC Park, which a lot of people will tell you is one of the great places to go watch a baseball game. Give me one story about PNC Park, something you've seen, something you've liked. It doesn't have to be the pigeon, which is...
Give the people what they want.
Yeah, give the people what they want. That's right. Is there anything about PNC Park, a story, a moment there that you've had that you kind of take and tell people?
Well, when I think of PNC Park and stories, the number one story is the quote-unquote no-hitter that Hunter Green threw in 2022. It was 7 1/3, and then Art Warren behind him, combined for 8 no-hit innings, but because of an error by Alejo Lopez, they took the loss. And I'll just remember always the scene walking to the clubhouse after that game where Nick Kroll was talking to someone in the front office who I can't remember, but it was, is this a no-hitter because he didn't throw 9 innings? Is it not a no-hitter because it was only 8? I remember them having that debate. I remember that was the last time I interviewed Alejo Lopez. Very nice guy, but he just wasn't a part really of the news after that. And I remember asking him, how do you balance the highs and the lows of the day? Because some people were happy about the result from Hunter. And then he just shakes his head, and he was in a tough spot. I remember that. And then I remember Hunter just kind of pacing back and forth in the clubhouse after that game.
I have a lot. I'll stick with 2. The first one being quickly when the Reds lost the 1-game playoff to the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Cueto, that game when he was on the mound. After the game, Bob Castellini, I'd never seen him do this before, was down in the tunnel and walking toward Dusty Baker's office. I'd never seen that happen before, and I knew something was up right then. The other one was that day when I was walking in, and you see us all the time, the TV folks, when we have the one-man band things. So we've got our backpack, our camera, our tripod, the live view, which is how we get live from places, so it's an extra backpack. I was walking out to the field. I had all this equipment, and this very nice gentleman from behind says, hey, let me grab that tripod for you. And I'm like, no, I got it. He's like, no, I insist. And I turn around, it's Ernie Johnson. The great Ernie Johnson was calling the game that night because I believe the game was on TBS. It was
on TBS, I remember that.
And so he picked up my tripod and carried it all the way out of the side of the field, and he said, look, I used to have to do the same thing, so I wanted to pay it forward a little bit. The great Ernie Johnson. I love telling that story, and because I consider him one of the best people in this business ever to do it. So for him to help me out in a moment like that, I'll never forget. Charlie, this was fun. We're going to do it every week. We went like a cool 30 minutes, man, real easy. We'll be talking Reds and Bengals here on this platform, streaming on Fox 19 now. We settled on the gold standard. Are you good with it?
This is, I always trust the big decision making to you.
I workshopped it a little bit with Jeremy back in the sports department. He said, yeah, I love that. That's great. I wanted gold bars. But he said, like, not everybody's into hip hop culture and understand that a bar is like, a rap lyric. So we're going to go gold standard. Charlie Goldsmith, Joe Danneman, thanks for watching. We'll do this every single week right here on Fox 19, now social media platforms and streaming platforms. A lot of fun. Can't wait to do it with Charlie. Thanks.
See you soon.